TFA fam, welcome back in. We have a Wednesday recap of what has gone on with free agency. Went live on Monday. More craziness has happened. A little bit more on the defensive side today with the massive Von Miller contract, and we'll get into all that. But just wanted to thank you guys for being here with us. Hope you're all doing well. If you are new to the channel or if you're not new and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so. Got a bunch of content coming. We have some guests lined up coming in the following weeks as well. A bunch of rookie mocks and whatnot too. So make sure you keep it locked in here. Kev, let's just dive into the goodies, man. Let's go through this position by position. Obviously, some more to talk about with some other positions, but starting off at quarterback, obviously we have Aaron Rodgers staying with Green Bay. We also have Green Bay paying a bunch of other players, and it kind of seems like Devontae Adams is not too happy right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him, because now he's saying that he's going to refuse to play on the franchise tag. So that's going to be interesting to watch and monitor. Obviously, we had Russell Wilson traded to Denver, which love to see it. I'm happy to see that team with finally with a functioning quarterback now, and especially somebody like Russ to hopefully unlock that offense. Something you've been talking about, what it seems like for half a year now, Kev. We actually did have Mitchell Trubisky sign a 2-year deal with the Steelers, and it's not necessarily starter money either. So I'm going to be really interested to see what they end up doing with in the draft, because they can definitely still go that route if they want to. They do have a bunch of other holes though. And then outside of that, we still have Jimmy G hanging out there. Watson, obviously the big domino to fall. Kind of seems like New Orleans, Houston, Atlanta, and Cleveland are the teams to watch there. Speaking of Cleveland, it looks like Baker is gone, regardless of what ends up happening with Watson or not. So, out of that group, Kev, anything that you want to touch on? What is most intriguing to you? What are you looking for? What are you waiting for? Are there any other names still out there that you're interested to see where they land?
Yeah, I'm ready to see where some of these wide receivers are going to wind up. I mean, we've been largely, for the most part, at least the top guys, top names, the Jujus, the Allen Robinsons that, have yet to sign. Even Jarvis Landry has not signed yet. And so, I think some of it has to do with the Jaguars fucking it up for everybody else, because they just overpaid these guys. And I think, even if you're Allen Robinson, you're probably saying, well, shit, if Christian Kirk just got that, I'm going to need more than that, And so I think a lot of teams are having trouble with that, because I think the other teams are saying, no, we're not going to, pay you $25 million a year or something like that. And so I think it's largely messed up the market a little bit. And so, and I also think Deshaun Watson, I think people are probably waiting to see where he winds up. Because, if you're Allen Robinson, maybe you want to go play with Deshaun Watson, if he goes to like Atlanta, which honestly, I think now everything I've heard is I think they're the favorite to land him. And I mean, it makes sense. He's from there. That's where his home is at, is in Atlanta. So it would make a lot of sense for him to go there. It's going to be interesting to see how they maneuver all that. Obviously, they're going to have to do a restructure with Matt Ryan, which came out that they restructured it, and then it came out today that they actually haven't completed that restructure yet. And so then, you'd obviously see then, Matt Ryan gets shipped off somewhere else. Could be Cleveland, could be, Indianapolis. So those teams are going to have to kind of wait and hold and see what happens there, with some of this stuff as well. So there's going to be a lot of movement once Deshaun Watson goes.
Are you actually excited about Trubisky in Pittsburgh, or is this just a case of like you've been talking about it for so long and it actually happened, and now like you're kind of just like, all right, well, here I am, I'm stuck?
No, I actually am. I want to see what he can do. not with Matt Nagy, surrounded by weapons. I mean, this is by far the best weapons he's ever going to have. I mean, he did get to play with Allen Robinson, and I guess Darnell Mooney his rookie year, but that was it. I mean, they had nobody there. Taylor Gabriel and, guys like that were there at wide receiver, and Tariq Cohen, and so I think that, put him here in this offense. And, honestly, it's kind of one of the spots we talked about as being like probably one of the best spots you could go to, this offseason. It was better than the Denver situation, in my opinion. You get to play with Deontay, Claypool, Freiermuth, and Najee. I mean, that is an excellent group. And I like what they've done along the offensive line this offseason. They have a very young offensive line, and I think this is a group that is going to be able to grow together. And so I think Pittsburgh's a great spot. So I think it'll be interesting to see him. And again, my point with him is I don't think he's all of a sudden going to be like a top 10 quarterback, and for fantasy purposes. But I think he can be a viable QB2 streaming option. And while a lot of people think that he is like, untouchable, like he's a QB3 or something like that, and I don't think that's the case. I think he has mobility. I think spending a year, sitting on the bench, learning from Brian Dable, who is a lot of people have talked about him being, a quarterback whisperer, kind of him turning around Josh Allen, and getting some time to work with him, I think could pay dividends as well. So I'm interested to see how he does, but yeah, I think that he can be a viable super flex. If you had him as your QB2, QB3, I think I'd be really happy with that.
I do want to mention before we move on to running backs is it's kind of weird that we have heard, at least I haven't seen anything on Jameis Winston like at all. Like I haven't even seen his name even really muttered or whispered around or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see if, maybe if Watson misses out on, if he doesn't end up going to New Orleans, what the Saints are going to do. I mean, I guess they still have Taysom Hill chilling there, but that's that would be a name that I would have preferred in Pittsburgh, but neither here nor there now. But let's go ahead and move on to running backs, and we really haven't seen a lot happening here over the past couple days, and going back to the franchise tags a couple weeks ago. Still have a lot of the names still hanging around out there, but we have James Conner re-signed with Arizona for 3 years. Chase Edmonds, the guy who was with James Conner in Arizona, he goes to Miami, now going to be with McDaniels in that offense. What else are we missing here? Oh, Brandon Bolden just went to Las Vegas following McDaniels out there. And then the one that just really, really chapped my ass was we got the news, 2 days ago, I think, that J.D. McKissic was going to Buffalo. We were firing up the Antonio Gibson bandwagon, going in full force, baby. Nothing stopping it this year. And then J.D. McKissic says, actually, you know what? I'm going back to Washington. Apparently it's for the same money, basically the same contract. So that one just really, just really chapped my ass, man. But other than that, we obviously have Melvin Gordon hanging around out there. Rashad Penny, if you're into that sort of thing. And then Raheem Mostert, that was the other one, going with Miami as well, along with Chase Edmonds. But outside of that, really not a lot to be excited about at the running back position. I mean, Ronald Jones still sitting out there, Sony Michel, a couple other Jags like that, but and Fournette, obviously. But anything sticking out to you here at running back, Kev?
No, and I'm curious if Leonard Fournette will follow, Tom Brady and go back there because there's not like a lot of places that just desperately need a running back. Seattle maybe, but I don't know if they sign a Leonard Fournette. I don't know if they're in a position to do that, and so I could see him going back to Tampa. Now that they've kind of cleared up some money and have a little bit of money to spend, I could see that happening, which I think would be great, especially for fantasy purposes, for him to go back there. Everything that he did there, because I mean it would essentially be his backfield, and then you would probably see Keyshawn Vaughn. I'm assuming they'd probably draft somebody this offseason as well. So I could see that with Leonard Fournette, and so for me, I guess the running back, Melvin Gordon as well. Where is he going to wind up? There's been some talk about him possibly going back to the Chargers. which would make some sense. I think the Austin Eckler people would not be a fan of that because I think he would dig into Austin Eckler. But, especially that goal line role that he had last year, I don't know if he would still have it. Just as long as he doesn't go. Just stay away from Denver, okay? Just stay away from Denver. Leave Javonte alone.
Your heart would not be able to handle that with McKissick going back to Washington.
Oh, I was so angry when I saw it. At first, when I saw the Bills, I'm like, okay, here we go. I don't care about you, Devin Singletary. Whatever. Antonio Gibson's finally going to get the lead back role. And then all of a sudden, the notification comes across where he changed his mind. And I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, that
which is odd to me. If you had the choice to play with Josh Allen or Carson Wentz, it's the same money too. It would be different if it was, maybe the Washington was offering, $2 or $3 million more. Okay, then I could understand it. But there was the same exact contract, same amount.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I do not get it either. But the position group that has been with some of the bigger names has had a lot of movement, some big contracts as well, as you were alluding to at the beginning of the show with Jacksonville kind of messing up the market for everybody. Let's move on to wide receiver. Amari Cooper was traded to Cleveland for basically a 5th-round pick, right? It was Cooper and a 6th for a 5th and a 6th. So they basically just swapped 6 this year. And then Dallas got an extra 5th, having to take on that $20 million contract. It played a big part in why that's the only compensation they were able to get. Devontae Adams, like we talked about, was franchise tagged, but it doesn't seem like as of right now that he's willing to play on that. Like I said, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Because, man, what is Green Bay going to do if they don't have Devontae? That's that is scary to think about for, even for fantasy purposes as well. Anyway, Chris Godwin was tagged, but he just signed a deal a couple hours ago. 3 years, $60 million. I think 40 of that is guaranteed. Basically the same contract that Mike Williams got, which does not make sense to me from that standpoint of the market. But Mike Williams back to the Chargers, 3 years, $60 million. I think he had like $41 million guaranteed, if I'm remembering correctly. DJ Chark going to Detroit, saving us from Allen Robinson going to Detroit, hopefully. Zay Jones and Christian Kirk going to Jacksonville. Michael Gallup re-signed with Dallas. Russell Gage sneakily to Tampa Bay, I think crushing a lot of Tyler Johnson truthers, myself included. Isaiah McKenzie back with Buffalo. Cedric Wilson goes to Miami, which I thought was an interesting signing. I thought he was going to stay with Dallas. And then we have a bunch of the names that are still hanging out there. We saw A-Rob out there, Juju, Odell, Jarvis Landry, who was just released the other day. Will Fuller is still hanging around there too. And then we have another couple of names, Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Jacoby Myers, who's a restricted free agent. But Kev, out of the I know we want to talk a little bit about A-Rob and some of the guys who haven't signed yet, but for the guys who have signed or have been traded, what stands out to you most among that position group?
Well, I mean, I think Russell Gage could actually be a pretty interesting fantasy option this year. Because, we saw them, and especially because Chris Godwin, I mean, I don't know if he'll be ready to go by the time, the season starts. And if he does, he could, be a little slow to get up to tempo. And we've seen Russell Gage be able to post double-digit fantasy production, right? And so now you're tethered back with Tom Brady, be the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. And we've seen that be a very lucrative role. I mean, AB last year, when they all three were healthy, I mean, these guys were posting. Now, obviously, Russell Gage is not as good as Antonio Brown, but I do think that, and it was kind of surprising that Tom Brady actually reached out to Russell Gage. I think that's what the report was, and told them that he wanted him and that he was a big fan of his game. Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. And so clearly he likes him. And so, I think, you can kind of look at Russell Gage, at least from fantasy purposes, like, probably a wide receiver 4, I think at worst right now in that offense. And so, I think Russell Gage is a big winner for fantasy football purposes. And then, as far as the other signings go, I mean, I think Braxton Berrios is kind of an underrated signing. If you look at him, especially like the last 5 weeks of the year, now, yes, some of those guys were hurt. Corey Davis was in and out. Elijah Moore was hurt. But I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit with Elijah Moore. Like Elijah Moore does not play the slot. Elijah Moore plays on the outside. Only played 17% of the snaps from the slot, which is somewhat surprising because I thought he was going to be a slot guy. But that's not the way that they use them at all. And so I think that Braxton Berrios could kind of carve out a pretty nice role. I mean, he was solid. Top. I think he was top 5 or top 10 wide receiver over the last 5 weeks of the season, and which is crazy. It's crazy, and I'll never forget. I don't know if Walito's in here or not, but during the season last year, we called out Braxton Berrios being a great play. We all kind of laughed at him, and I mean, he went off that game. So.
Yeah.
I kind of like low key what the Jets have done so far, through free agency. They've made a lot of really good signings so far, and bolstered their offensive line, brought in some more weapons for this offense. Made some upgrades on the defense as well. So I like kind of what the Jets have done so far with this offense, and I think it's also probably good news for some of the stuff that's also fun to get into is talking about guys that, who are the winners of the players that are already on teams. Like, I think Michael Carter is a big win because they just re-signed Tevin Coleman, and I'm not worried about Tevin Coleman. And so I think that's kind of a big win for Michael Carter and for people that, hold him in dynasty or, looking to draft him. Because I think he'll probably be like a 4th or 5th round guy probably this year in fantasy football, at least redraft purposes. And I think that's where he probably goes. Maybe a little bit later than that. I think Michael Carter can be a steal.
Bringing in Laken Tomlinson as well on the offensive line, I think is obviously a big addition. Going along with Elijah Vera Tucker, if with the picks that they have too, going to be interesting to see what they do at tackle. If they add somebody at tackle, and then what does that say about Mekhi Becton, who they just spent that high capital on 2 years ago, I think, going into his 3rd year now, maybe.
Yeah, but the Jets offensive line wasn't even like terrible last year. I mean, it was a they weren't elite or anything like that, but for an offense, I mean, they were 22nd in adjusted line yard, which isn't great, but not terrible either for the Jets, and 11th in open field rank and 19th in second level. So I mean, their offensive line last year wasn't terrible, and so I think just making these added additions, I think, is going to help. So I like what the Jets have done so far. And so I think they could kind of be a little bit of an underrated kind of fantasy offense or an offense to target in fantasy football because none of their guys are going to be drafted high. Maybe Elijah Moore, probably the highest, just because of the buzz around him. But past that, I mean, I think there's some guys you can target here in this offense. Like, I love Michael Carter for 2022.
You were talking about some of the winners and losers on the team. What is your take on, and obviously I'm going to ask you because I was the Amon-Ra St. Brown truther, pounding the table for him every chance I got last year. And we really saw him obviously at the end of the season, second half of the season last year, really take off. Then they go and they get DJ Chark, and I've been seeing a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown slander on the timeline. Do you have any a take right now in terms of just, I guess, Chark in general, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that, I guess, that offense as a whole?
I mean, one, good for DJ Chark, right? Like for a guy who basically has had 1 year of production in his career, the fact that he was able to get a $10 million contract for 1 year, I think is great. But he's not the guy that's gonna stop Amon-Ra St. Brown. If the biggest thing we should probably look at though is TJ Hawkinson, because his big spike in production came when TJ Hawkinson went down, and that is it would be the bigger concern.
Swift.
Yeah, and Swift as well. I played a part in that, but Hawkinson. So once you get all these guys back, the biggest question mark for me is, one, are you still projecting them to probably have to throw the ball a lot? Because the thing about them last year is they were really able to keep themselves in the games. They were not a team that was getting blown out every single week, and they were just forced to throw the ball 40 or 50 times, 40 times a game. It just wasn't happening. And so If they're like that again, and they're a team that is going to really try to run the ball, I mean, then I think that limits the ceiling of all of these guys, and maybe then you're not as excited about Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown is dead. I've seen the slander on Twitter of people acting like he's dead because they signed DJ Chark. Like DJ Chark is not going to be the reason that Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't have a good year this year. It's just not. I think it's just the culmination of all of them, Swift and Hawkins, when they're all healthy, that maybe he's probably not going to see the ridiculous target share that he was seeing. And so that would be my take on it. But the people acting like DJ Chark is the reason, I think, is where it's misguided.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the people who were excited about St. Brown going into this year, I think everyone generally understood that he wasn't going to be seeing like a 33% target share. You know what I mean? But like now people are just like, he's nothing. He's dead. He's gone. And I agree with everything you just outlined there. I think that was made a nice case for him. I think he's going to be a solid value come draft time in August. Do you have any predictions on where some of these bigger names that are still out there end up landing? I did see that Jarvis Landry had scheduled a visit with the Falcons. Other than that, haven't really seen. Well, obviously, A-Rob, he was down to 3 teams, and you want to talk about one of these things is not like the other. It was the Lions, the Browns, and the Chiefs, which how you land on those 3 is beyond me, but apparently that's what it was. Doesn't look like it's going to be the Lions now, so now we just have to hold out hope that it's not the Browns. I mean, I guess unless Watson goes there. A-Rob, Juju, Fuller, Landry, any inkling where some of these guys end up?
A-Rob, I wouldn't be surprised if he lands wherever Deshaun Watson goes. I think that is a real possibility because if he goes to most every team that he could possibly go to needs another wide receiver. Atlanta definitely does, especially with Calvin Ridley's situation. They have Kyle Pitts, and it's not good after that. So I could see, Allen Robinson following Deshaun Watson there. I could also see him if same thing with Cleveland. They have Amari Cooper. They released Austin Hooper, so that's kind of good news for David Njoku, at least for 2022, as long as it's not Baker Mayfield.
I did not see that
to clear cap. Wow. It's obviously just Harrison Bryant and David Njoku there, but they could definitely use another wide receiver, especially after cutting Jarvis. So I think, like I said, I think he has a lot to do with that. Juju Smith-Schuster's been interesting because he just hasn't had any buzz whatsoever. Like there's been kind of some he's been linked to some teams, but even some of those teams have come out there's been reports that the Eagles, and then all of a sudden it was like no, the Eagles aren't in on him at all. And so I think he's kind of burned some bridges here with his TikTok, and I don't care that he does TikTok. I really don't. People should not care. I think people have a problem with that he was going out there and just dancing on people's logos and that's where I think people had a problem with it. And when you're not a player that's out here just crushing it every year, you don't really get to do that. And so I think that's kind of a bad look for him. And I think that he's probably staring down the barrel of another 1-year deal. Unfortunately, especially he was hurt all of last year for the most part with the shoulder injury. Didn't come back until the last week or the playoffs? I think it was
the playoffs.
Against the Chiefs. And so I think you could see a team like the Chiefs. I think they've probably made him an offer and just take it or leave it, and they're waiting to him to find out that he's not going to have a market. I think that's what he should do. He's still young. He's 25 years old. Go play for a great offense where you're not stuck with Big Ben and all these other wide receivers. Bounce back, have a really great year, and then you can get the bag. You're still young enough. You don't have to. But he's looking for this long-term deal, and that's just not coming. Nobody's giving him a big contract. And I've seen some of the Steelers blogs that have been like, oh, maybe he comes back. And I'm like, he should not come back to the Steelers.
Imagine having the opportunity to go to the Chiefs last year and sticking around with the Steelers. It was very similar money, right? I don't think it was I think it was maybe $1 million off from. I think the Chiefs were offering maybe like $1 million lower than what he ended up signing for. Like if you wanted to get that long-term contract, you should have went to an offense that had no questions, and that was the Chiefs.
Yeah, and he's an excellent fit for the Chiefs. He is an absolute excellent fit because that's what the Chiefs need. The Chiefs need a big body wide receiver who can go over the middle, run the short intermediate routes, and that's exactly what they need. Very much like Sammy Watkins did. Great run after the catch guy. That's what they're looking for, and that's what they need. And I think Juju Smith-Schuster would play that role perfectly. He's a perfect fit for their offense and what they're looking for. And you know. I would love to see Allen Robinson come to Kansas City. I don't think that's probably going to happen because they're probably not going to pay him the money that with the money they have tied up with some of these other guys and stuff like that. I don't see them realistically signing Allen Robinson. I think he has enough of a market where he's probably not coming here, and that's why I think Juju or Jarvis Landry make the most sense.
Jameson, not getting us, not fooling us with this Michael Thomas trade. I appreciate the effort. Not happening. Something else that's not happening. Walito, buddy, just be like Frozen. Just let it go.
So if you had to make your pick, your prediction, where do you think he goes?
I'm with you. I think Atlanta makes the most sense for him. Although I don't necessarily think it makes sense for Atlanta. I mean, obviously, if you have the ability to go out and get somebody like Watson, you do it. But those cupboards are going to be bare, man. They are not going to have a lot to put around him. They have no running back. That offensive line that they put a bunch of capital into over like 2 or 3 drafts, I think like 5 years ago. I think there was that one draft where they had 2 offensive linemen in the first round. That hasn't worked out. If they're going to be sending players away, it's going to have to be some defensive players like maybe AJ Terrell, at corner. They are really not going to have a lot around him. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they end up doing to make him successful. But I think, if the reports are true that he doesn't want to play, cold weather, things like that, obviously being in that division, then in the dome on top of it, you were talking about where he's from and all that. So I think that makes the most sense for Watson of the Falcons.
I'm surprised he even took a meeting with Cleveland. Like, I was kind of surprised by that because all the reports of it, he doesn't want to play anywhere cold.
Right.
And so I was kind of surprised, taken aback a little bit that he took a meeting with Cleveland. Now it makes sense because, that team, their defense is excellent. Yeah. You have Nick Chubb still there. That's an offense. You add one more player.
One of the best offensive lines.
Watson, great off. I don't know why they released Treader. I don't understand why they did that, but I guess that, you have to free up some money, which that's what you're going to have to do to get Deshaun Watson. But regardless, that offensive line is still excellent. And so, you add that. They just added Amari Cooper. If you can get a Allen Robinson to come there, which is very possible, that now you're talking about another really scary team in the AFC.
Yeah. And I guess real quick before we move on to tight ends, we should mention I guess just your overall thoughts on Trevor Lawrence going into 2022. Obviously, the change at head coach with Dougie P coming in, and then what they did with their free agency signings with Christian Kirk. And thank God that contract looks super inflated to what it actually is. Going out, it's, and that's the thing that I hate about these NFL contracts is the money we see is never the money unless your name is Kirk Cousins and you're just getting guaranteed contracts every single year. But it seemed like Christian Kirk was getting $20 million per year, and it comes out it's basically $12 million per year or something for the first 2 or 3 years in terms of the guaranteed money. But obviously they go out Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. They still have Marvin Jones there. Laviska Shenault still there, which I think the Chiefs should be getting on the horn about Laviska. I think that could be a really fun fit and could kind of, you were talking about what Juju could bring that offense. But anyway, I guess just your overall thoughts on this, and then ETN coming back obviously as well. They added Brandon Scherf to the offensive line. So, do you think Trevor Lawrence is? Do you think Trevor Lawrence ends up being like the popular, hyped up guy, the popular sleeper who no longer becomes a sleeper, not a value anymore? Right? Because I think that's kind of where I'm leaning. But I guess just your overall thoughts on this Jaguars offense has been revamped over the past week, basically.
The problem is like even though they've added a lot of players, at least on the offensive side, they really haven't added anything that's like super sexy, right? Like Christian
Yeah.
Kirk, really good slot wide receiver. I like the signing. I think it makes them better, but at the same time, like they still don't have a true alpha. They don't have a true number one. Marvin Jones is getting older. He's in his 30s. You know, they're looking to trade LaVisca Chenault. Zay Jones, I don't understand the money they gave him. It makes absolute zero sense. But like I said, you know, the other night, like you don't have a choice when you're a team like this. That's what you have. Those are the moves you have to make because you're not getting these guys that are going to come there, you know? And I think they would have been better suited just kind of slow building this, maybe waiting another year, getting better, you know, and then, you know, hopefully Trevor Lawrence takes another step forward. And then I think, you know, going all in with the money that they have. I think some of it's been a little bit misguided again, where the money they spent. But I definitely think, I mean, there's no way that Trevor Lawrence can be any worse than what he was last year. I mean, that was a really, truly horrible year for him.
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, I mean, I think this offense is definitely going to be better than what it was. I think Travis Etienne can be. I think right now, I mean, I think he's a solid RB2, back end RB2 right
Yeah.
now. Should be fully healthy, ready to go. I think they talked about him. You know, he's already running and you know, cutting and all that stuff. So that's positive for him. And so I do think this offense, but if it's going to get like overhyped, then no, I'll pass on Trevor Lawrence. There's going to be other options there that are better than Mike. I don't think this offense is all of a sudden going to be like some top 10 scoring offense or something like that. Like something where, you know, all this fantasy goodness is coming from. Like, I don't think they're going to take that kind of a leap.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Do you,
Let's move on. Go ahead.
well, I did want to say because Alexis posted this, and you know, before like I even saw that, like he's somebody that nobody's talked about. Like he is a free agent, you know, Antonio Brown, and nobody's talked about. Now, of course, we know what he did on the field, but he's gonna get signed. Somebody's gonna add him. Now, is it gonna be right now? Probably not, because of I think he had surgery or whatever to fix his whatever issue he said that he had. But he's gonna get signed by somebody. But I just don't hear anybody talking about Antonio Brown. But somebody's gonna sign him. He's still too good. Even at his age, like he is still too fucking. I mean, he is still. If he didn't do what he did, you know, and at the end, like we'd be talking about him as one of the top free agent options, if not the top free agent option for this offseason.
Yeah, that's the issue though, right? And it's not just that one incident. And it's not just on the field, it's off the field as well.
Have we heard any more on that? I've seen kind of Colin Kaepernick wanted to go there, but
I'm so sick of the Kaepernick stuff. Like
I'll say this.
nothing to
I'll
do
say
with
this.
the off the field stuff. Just every single time his name comes up, we have to do this all over again. It's been 5 years, and then I'm over it. I'm over it. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I think he. I mean, we've seen some really bad quarterbacks in the NFL
Oh,
that he's
100%.
clearly better than, right? And I get the drama and everything else that surrounds him and the stuff that you know that's happened. Whatever, I don't care about that stuff. He's deserved another opportunity by now. And I don't hate it. If a team wants to bring him in, give him a second chance, be a backup because he's not going to be a starter anywhere. But you know, have an opportunity to compete for and who knows? I mean, Drew Lock's in Seattle, right? If they don't go out and they don't get Baker or Matt Ryan or trade for somebody like that, and it's Drew Lock, like there's a chance that Colin Kaepernick, I think he shouldn't be blackballed from the NFL. And I think he deserves another chance. So we'll see. But I mean, Pete Carroll's responses really weren't like ringing endorsements either. It was he says he deserves a second chance, but he doesn't know if that's in Seattle. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm just I'm just because like I said, every time it comes up, we have to do the same thing about who still has the backup jobs and he's better than them. And, like I'm just just give it up at this point. Let's just all move on, and let's all move
Absolutely.
on.
Tim damn Tebow has been given so many damn opportunities in the NFL,
Oh
that
yeah,
he never deserved. Like he never should have been brought in as a tight end, with the Jags last year and everything else. Like we've seen guys get multiple opportunities, and like I said, like Colin Kaepernick took a team to a Super Bowl. Like
yeah.
regardless of whatever you want, I mean, super dynamic, and like he was a little bit behind before his time because now like we've seen a huge influx of quarterbacks, that can run, and where he was a little bit early to it, but now like he's a perfect fit in the NFL, and so like if he still has that and he still has the athleticism, and which I don't know why he wouldn't, and he's not that old, and he had a cannon. His issue was always accuracy. The day it happened, the first time, whenever all this stuff happened and everything else, I was always of the belief he deserves to be in the NFL. There's no reason it should have taken this long, and hopefully he does. But we'll see.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm just saying, just from the because then we have to listen to everybody debate it, and that's the part that I'm over. So if he's gonna come in, bring him in. Let's see if what he can do. I agree. He's better than probably 30 of the backups in the NFL at least. You know what I mean? So I completely agree with that. But it's just the debating, the discussion every single time his name comes up. That's the part that I'm over. But if he lands somewhere, I want him to land somewhere. Just do it. let's let's just get it over with. Let's go ahead and finish up with the tight ends, and I guess we can talk about some of the defensive signings and offensive line to wrap this up a little bit after that as well. But Dalton Schultz, franchise tag going back to Dallas. Gesicki going back to Miami. Zach Ertz re-signs with Arizona. Seems like Gronk is going to end up back in Tampa Bay. Evan Ingram is one of the players who was potentially overpaid as well by Jacksonville. He's going with the Jags. Ricky Seals-Jones, I just saw this. This did not pop up in the Discord, but as I was going through right beforehand, I saw Ricky Seals-Jones at the Giants, which I think could be potentially sneaky with I mean all the health question marks that they have with Sterling Shepard. Obviously, Kadarius Toney wasn't able to stay healthy last year, but they have no tight end there now. Kyle Rudolph was let go. Obviously, I just said Evan Ingram went to Jacksonville, so I think that could potentially be semi sneaky. We saw Ricky Seals-Jones last year in place of my God, why is his name escaping me? The tight end that we talked about every single week as a streamer.
Oh, Thomas.
Logan
Logan
Thomas.
Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah, geez. We saw when Logan Thomas went down, Ricky Seals-Jones was putting up, double-digit fantasy points. So excited for that one. And then ones that did not make sense. CJ Uzoma signing with the Jets. Okay, fine, whatever. We see this happen all the time with teams that make deep runs or go to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. That's some of the secondary players get picked up, maybe get a little bit overpaid, but then they also just went out and got Tyler Conklin as well. So I thought that was a little head scratching, especially for a team that could probably use that money and that roster space elsewhere. But a lot of these tight ends staying with the teams that they were with last year. Oh, and then OJ Howard to Buffalo as well. That one kind of flew under the radar after Von Miller went out and just got the bank, the Brinks truck backed up to him. But anything that you're particularly excited about here at tight end?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Evan Ingram might be interesting with Jacksonville, but is he going to stay healthy? I don't know. Are they going to use him correctly? I mean, his ADOT was ridiculous, stupid. Way to go, Joe Judge. But like was I mean for a guy with his athleticism, like he's built like he's a wide receiver. Like
Yeah,
he's not a true. He's not an inline. He
no.
at all. He's a move tight end, somebody that you put on the outside, put in the slot. Um, and so like I think he could be an interesting option. Obviously, he's super athletic. So but we've been hoping on Evan Ingram for years. And so we'll see if Jacksonville can do anything for that. Another, like Cincinnati still really needs a tight end. I mean, with Uzoma gone, I guess they still have Drew Sample there, but
I was going to say maybe they used Drew Sample, who they drafted in the second round.
I guess maybe they go back to that well again and add Trey McBride in the draft this year. But I mean, there's nobody that really stood out to me like, oh my god, that's great. Like I think Dalton Schultz going back to Dallas is fantastic. I mean, he's a locked in top. He's at like 5 or 6 for me right now.
Yep.
Just absolutely locked in. I mean, losing Cooper, that just automatically opens up more targets. Michael Gallup is going to take some time. Like I said, I think he had surgery today on the ACL, which tells me then he had significant other damage in there. It wasn't just the ACL. If it was just an ACL, he would have already had surgery. But so it tells me he probably had an MCL as well, which is a problem, which takes even longer to come back from. And so the fact that he hasn't even had it yet, I mean, it might be December till we see him, to see Michael Gallup. It could be a while. They lost Cedric Wilson. And so, like, Dalton Schultz is going to, I mean, he could see 125 targets in this offense this year. So I think it's a big win for him that he's coming back. And then Zach Ertz, he played really well with Arizona. Good signing there. And they're another team that lost a lot of players. AJ Green is gone. Christian Kirk is gone. And so, obviously DeAndre Hopkins will be back. And then, we'll see with Rondale Moore what he ends up being. But they're another team that, I think with Zach Ertz, somebody that probably, I mean, you have to look definitely like he's still a top 12 tight end. And so I think that's where, Gronk would have went to Cincinnati if he didn't retire. Yeah, but he's definitely going back to Tampa Bay. I would be shocked if he went anywhere that's not with Tom Brady.
Right.
So other than that, like the rest of the tight ends are terrible. I was hoping OJ Howard would go somewhere interesting. Go to Cincinnati or somewhere that really kind of need a tight end. That's what I was hoping for. Of course not. Like the fantasy community loved OJ Howard coming out. Like when he was coming out, because remember that was him, Ingram, and Njoku's class. Like all three of them were coming out. And I mean, obviously all three of those guys were first round picks. And everybody loved those guys. And really none of them have really done anything. I mean, Njoku's shown flashes. We've seen flashes from him. I think in the right offense, I think he could actually be a stud. He's still super athletic. OJ Howard, obviously, he's had some injuries, but then, has never taken off. And Evan Ingram's also been hurt. But Buffalo doesn't really get me all super excited either.
No.
With Dawson Knox there.
Correct. So just to finish this out, we can just touch on some of these defensive and offensive line signings that are making the biggest deals. Kind of go through this alphabetical order to make it easier on myself. But Baltimore paying Marcus Williams, Zadarius Smith going there as well. They also added Morgan Moses at right tackle. Thought that was kind of a little bit of an underrated signing. Then obviously we have Von Miller with that massive contract today, 6 years, $120 million, but only 51 of that is guaranteed. It's basically over the first like 2 to 3 years as well. But that was a big signing by them. They also got Taquan Jones, Tim Settle as well, Roger Saffold on the offensive line. So they're starting to try and load up and get past the hump of the playoffs so they can get to a Super Bowl. Carolina looking a little more, I guess, appealing to Deshaun Watson with getting Austin Corbett on the offensive line. Xavier Woods at safety, they paid him 3 years, $15 million. And if that defense for Carolina can start to gel, they have a lot of really interesting pieces. So that's good. They're going to be a fun team to watch to see if they can put it all together. Going through this a little bit more, obviously Alex Kappa, the big signing for Cincy, getting him on the offensive line, trying to shore that up. Ted Karras also at center going to Cincy as well. As I was going through Roto World to kind of see if there was any last minute news I missed, I saw the Bengals logo and then I saw Michael Thomas and I almost shit my pants. But then it was the free safety, Michael Thomas, not obviously not the Saints. Randy Gregory going to Denver, so that kind of put the kibosh on Von Miller going back, and then obviously we got that news a couple days later. DJ Jones also going to Denver to kind of help replace Shelby Harris. Here was a I don't know how interesting this really is, but Dario Ogunbowale to Houston when they have Rex Burkhead and nothing else there. I think we might get some Dario Ogunbowale, maybe waiver weeks coming up here for Houston, as long as they don't do anything, and they shouldn't be doing anything at running back, because they are that is the farthest thing that they should be worrying about there. Obviously, with the Chargers on defense, that's the one that really has to be talked about. Like trading for Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson coming in, getting 5 years, $82 million. I think half of that was guaranteed. Sebastian Joseph Day also going to the Chargers as well. So that was that's just been wild, man, to see them loading up. That division is going to be a lot of fun. Jacksonville also made some defensive signings there. The Raiders getting Chandler Jones, and then also getting Rock Ya-Sin in that trade for Indy, sending
Ngakwe.
Ngakoue, and now you have Ngakoue and DeForest Buckner on the same line, which is which could be a lot of fun to and they've always had a solid defense as well. Now adding that into the fold. Anything? Obviously Marcus May going to the Saints. Shout out Walito. You got to be excited about something. The guy coming off an Achilles tear, definitely got to be excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, one, I don't know the Bills. I mean, I'm sure there's potential outs there with this. Like again, Von Miller is not young,
32.
right? About to be 33. Before the season starts, he will be 33, and so paying somebody that much money, and again, it's only 51 million guaranteed. And we'll see how much of that is front loaded. I would assume most of it, if not all of it, is probably front loaded, because you're not going to be paying dead money to a what 36, 37-year old Von
Yeah.
Miller. Like that's just not going to happen. And so, I mean, it was definitely a need for Buffalo on that defense, which was already one of the best defenses in the league last year. But adding him to that, I still think he is more of a situational pass rusher now than he's not a guy you're going to be putting out there, a three down
Yeah.
player anymore, which is fine. And then Chandler Jones going to the Raiders, but I don't care. I mean, the Raiders are so far behind the other three teams now.
Yeah. Yeah.
With obviously with Herbert and Wilson and Mahomes. I mean, it just doesn't really do a whole lot for me. It's a great. I mean, it's good. It's a good deal. But Chandler Jones also older, 32, just turned 32. But yeah, I mean, the AFC West is just absolutely loaded, and every game is going to be on prime time, or so many of their games are going to be on prime time this year because of how loaded this division is. And so, I think other than that, the one thing that I've heard the most around here is fans are not happy because the Chiefs have not done anything other than signing Justin Reed, which was a hell of a deal. They got a steal. The first year they're only paying him $4 million, which is as great. He's young, 25 years old. He is very much what the Chiefs look for. Very much a Honey Badger replacement. Super athletic guy. You can, if you want to put him deep, you can do that. He does that very well. He's also, very physical, a box type safety that you can put up, have play linebacker, kind of do exactly what Honey Badger did for them. And so, absolutely love that deal. Got younger there, a cheaper deal than what Honey Badger's going to get. I don't know where he winds up at this point. He's got to find a home somewhere, but he
Yeah.
may not get the $15-16 million a year that he wants. Because again, he is a 5'9", 180-pound safety who's turning 30 years old. Like I said, I was happy that Chiefs did, but the Kansas City fan base is about to burn this place to the ground because they haven't made any moves other than that. But they're going to make moves. I'm not worried about that. But what's the other? Do you think? Because we heard a lot of talk too about Saquon Barkley being traded, and I still think there's a real possibility that he gets traded. Because I mean, it frees up $8 million for the Giants if they want to go ahead and do that. They're not going to bring him back. So and I think the reports were that they want a third or fourth round pick for him. And I don't know. Like, do you think he gets traded, or do you think he ends up winding up staying with the Giants? Because I mean, $8 million is a decent amount of money for a running back, but it's a 1-year deal. And so if you're one of these teams that are competing for this year, and you need a running back, Kansas City, but or a couple other places that could use a quarterback, like I don't know, like or Atlanta. I mean, who knows? Maybe Atlanta just says fuck it all. Give us Deshaun Watson. Give us Saquon. We're signing Allen Robinson. We're just going to have an elite offense in a conference that you're really only competing against, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and I guess Stafford, and the Rams and maybe the 49ers, depending on what they do. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of wide open. It's not like the AFC. So maybe the Falcons just go all in and just go scorched earth and trade for Saquon, because they definitely need a running back.
You're not buying in a CPAT year 2?
He's a free agent, ain't he? He's a free agent.
Well, run it back.
Because the last I looked, because I just happened to see it because, obviously Twitter searching for Chiefs stuff. I think the Chiefs are actually had the highest odds for signing Cordell Patterson.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't think we mentioned
that. We didn't mention Julio that got released, did we?
No, we did not. But
what do you think about him? I mean, obviously he was hurt last year. Again, soft tissue injuries just has killed his career. But now he's a free agent. You think he goes back to Atlanta? Especially if they get Deshaun? Maybe that's, again, another option? Or are we at the point with Julio where it's like, hey, man, you should probably retire at this point? Is he like, you remember like Randy Moss, who hung on way too long and what kind of wasn't the same guy there at the very end of his career, obviously, and hung on. I think he played with with Titans, and I think wasn't it the 49ers he played for a short stint with too, if I remember correctly. But it kind of feels like that. I mean, considering the fact that Titans gave up a second-round pick last year for him and then just cut him.
Yeah.
I mean, it says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, does he go back to Atlanta, or do you think he wants to, maybe if he doesn't get picked up until mid-season, and the Chiefs reach out to him and try, he ends up doing something like that. I don't know, man. It sucks too, because that was such a fast fall for Julio too. Literally just went from balling year in, year out, just putting up ridiculous numbers, ridiculous games. And then he's had some of those soft tissue injuries, the hammy with Atlanta, missed half the season. Obviously they weren't, competing or going anywhere. So it was kind of like, well, maybe he still has some in the tank. He still has it, but they, no reason to rush him back. Then he goes to Tennessee, and did he eclipse 60, 70 yards in any game? He has the one highlight of the juggling catch on the sideline. Other than that, I can't tell you what Julio did.
He had 2 games. He had week 2 against Seattle where he had 128 receiving yards. And then in the playoffs, he had 6 catches for 62 yards. And then I guess week 18 against Houston, he had 558, so he almost hit that threshold. And then Buffalo, 3 for 59. I don't think that it's like he's washed, like he doesn't have it anymore type of thing. It's just he can't stay healthy.
Right.
I mean, he only played he played 58% of the snaps last year. Now, I will say the Titans' offense was not great last year either.
No.
Especially their passing offense. And so that didn't help. I definitely think he gets signed. Somebody's adding him for sure. But I mean, maybe he goes to like he could go to a team like the Chiefs. I hope not. That's not really what I want, which is crazy to think. But that you don't want Julio Jones, but maybe like a Indy, I think could possibly be an option or something like that. But he's definitely going somewhere. Somebody's going to add him. Somebody's going to, hope that he can get some of the stuff behind him. But I mean, if you look, 2019 he had a monster year, 99 catches, almost 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns. But last year he only was able to, in 2020 only played 9 games, 51 catches, 771 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then last year, he played in 10 games, 31 catches for 434 yards and only 1 touchdown. So we've seen a pretty steady decline.
Sad.
In terms of production. But it's also he hasn't been able to play. He hasn't been healthy. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I said I hope he doesn't hang on to it because Julio Jones is one of the all-time great wide receivers that's ever played.
Yeah.
Hands down. And I just don't want to – I hate when you see guys that just hang on. If he goes anywhere, it has to be a team that he thinks they can win a Super Bowl because that's the only other reason he should be playing. He's 33 years old. Go to a team that you have a legitimate shot to win. Maybe the Chargers bring him in. Who knows? They could use another wide receiver, and only he doesn't need to be an every down guy. Somebody that you use situationally. They could use another wide receiver.
Yeah, that'd be a nice spot for him. But that is going to wrap it up. We appreciate you guys rocking with us. Like I said, make sure you hit that subscribe and that like button. Gonna have plenty of content coming up. We have some guests lined up. Gonna be doing some more mocks and whatnot. Then the draft is going to be here, and before you know it, it is going to be full-blown redraft fantasy football season. So keep it locked in here. We'll have more coming up for you soon. Appreciate you all. Talk to you later.